In this lecture, I'll be giving you a reminder of adding materials, and we'll be talking about how you can give things like the potion bottles or the books random colors, so every time you duplicate that object, it will give it a new random color. So I was just looking at my reference image and I was noticing there are a few things that are missing from what we have in our reference. I've got a rug in there, an open book, I've got these nice supporting beams. So there's a couple of things, but we can add those in later. What I want to focus on now is a little bit about the materials and how we can color the books in and the bottles in. So every time we duplicate them, it will have a new random material for us. So we'll work on that now. I'll just quickly bring my side panel in again, so it's not taking up too much space, and we'll go across to the shading workspace. Now what I want to do is bring out the workspace on the side here. People are obsessed with the names of my folders, so I've given some interesting ones for you there. But I want to change this to the 3D viewport instead. I'll use the base here for the shader editor. So this is currently the shader editor here. So I'll click and drag this one over this one. Hopefully you're comfortable with moving these menus and boxes and windows around, but your 3D cursor changes when you go over the edge and the middle. You can right click in the middle to join areas together, or choose the very corner here to drag a new one out, or drag over the top of the other one. So we've got three windows now, the 3D viewport here. We've got another 3D viewport, but this time this is in material preview mode, and I can scroll across my menu using the middle mouse button, and there's material preview mode just there. That previews all our materials, but obviously they're all just white at the moment with the default material. And then we've got our shader editor down the bottom, so when I click on an object, we can add a new material for it. So let's do the cauldron now we've selected it. So new material, and you get the printable BSDF. Hopefully remember that we've got our nodes going from left to right, and I can change things like the color in here, and that will update in the material output and therefore appear in our window. So for example, I'll change this to a nice gray or dark grey colour. I don't usually go all the way to black. I tend to go just away from black slightly. Most objects in real life aren't completely black. And it also gives us a bit of manoeuvre for when we come to compositing. We can add a bit of extra contrast, and therefore the darks become darker, the lights become lighter. So generally speaking, don't go all the way down to the black. Now you can make this a little bit more shiny or rough if you want, perhaps a tiny bit more shiny, so the roughness down slightly, and I think that looks good as a cauldron. And we can link materials, so these legs here, in fact I think they're linked duplicates, so I should be able to select one of these, select my cauldron last, so that's the active object, and Control L and link materials. And that's added that texture to all the feet because they are linked duplicates, so they share the same material. I should name my materials as well, so I'll call this black. In fact, I call it black cauldron. Is it cauldron? Cauldron? I think I'm spelling that wrong, but it doesn't matter. I'm always spelling things wrong. It's my dyslexia. So that's the very basics of texturing. Hopefully that's not new to you and it's just a reminder. But what I want to go through a little bit more is texturing things like these books. But now it's a good idea to catch up with me, texturing or adding a material to that cauldron and linking that material to the feet. So let's click on one of the books. I'll press period key to zoom in on that. Now the reason I usually have two windows, I tend to make this one without the overlays. So I turn the overlays off and turn the gizmos off so it's a little bit clearer, and then I can select things in here if I want to. So I can come to this first book here. We can't see the selection, but that helps us to see exactly what it's going to look like. So I'll create a new material for this book. And just for now, I'll give it a different color so you can kind of see that we've got that book selected. But what I want to do is that I want these other books to share the same material, but have a random color associated with them. So that every time I copy this book, so Shift D to duplicate, it will just randomly allocate a color and I don't need to keep swapping them over. It makes life a lot easier and quicker. So what we'll need to do, for ease sake, I haven't shown in my reference, I haven't ever shown the insides of the book apart from this one. So it makes it a little bit easier to have the book as all the same color. You can have different slots on them, which I'll talk about later, but we'll just give them one color for the moment And if we need to, we'll give the inside pages a texture as well for those that we need to. So in the material editor for this material, we use what's called the object info node. So Shift A to add, input, and there's the object input node. Oh, where has it gone? Object info node. Is that what I said? Object info. And it's random at the bottom here. So if I put in random like this, nothing actually happens because it doesn't know what sort of random thing it's supposed to make. So it needs a node in the middle here to say we want a random one of this node to go into the color. So Shift A to add. And the best way to do this I've found is the color ramp. So under converter, you've got the color ramp. Weirdly, it's not under color. You'd expect it to be, but it's under converter. Also, you can just use the search option here and type in color, and there's the color ramp there. And I can bring this over the top of my noodle and it will paste its way in there. So it's now going from random to the factor and to the base color. So this will now, at the moment, allocate a random color from black to white, so it's not really a color, onto this book just here. So if I select the other books, so I've selected all the books here, and this one is the one that's selected last. So it's, or the active object, I should say, Control L and link materials. You can see that they've all got a random black and white color. So all I need to do now is set up some colors in here. Okay, so what I'll quickly do is move these to a new collection, just so they're in a book collection. So move, new collection, books. And I'll set them up to an empty in a while, and then we can move them around easily. But for now, let's sort out the color ramp. So I'll zoom into the color ramp. You can easily add colors here. So you can just press the plus sign just there and keep pressing the plus sign. It will add lots of new colors, but it always adds it to the left of the one you have selected. So in between these two. So if I select this one and press the plus sign, it adds it in there, as you can see. So I have to keep sort of moving around a little bit and adding these colors in, but that's easy enough. So I've got lots of colors. And when I click on one, such as this one, let's try that again. Click on one, such as this one, I can go and change the color in here. So let's change that to, well, not quite such a vivid purple, purple around there, I would say. Now notice this one here has gone a bit pinky colored. Well, it's probably picking a color somewhere in the middle of the white and the pink. So what we could do with is having this as a solid color and this is a solid color. And that's just the transition between these colors. And we can change that with the option over here. And we change that to constant. And you can see now they're constant colors. This one was in the middle there, but that's white instead of pink. If I change this one to, let's say, a blue, you can see that's changed that one to blue. And the beginning one has picked that one up as well. So that's in this area somewhere. I could actually bring this one out slightly and bring this one out. So we've actually got that pink showing. And that one obviously is somewhere in here. Okay, so we can go through and start changing these colors up. Now, we probably don't want them too vivid. In fact, that green is probably too vivid. When I say vivid, there's the brightness that does sort of change its vividness, I suppose. We call this the value from light to dark. There's also the saturation. That's how close into the middle of the circle you are and to the outside. Outside is more saturated, towards the middle is less saturated. I think for a wizard's library, we probably wouldn't have, well, it depends how Disney-fied you want to go, or cartoony and stylized. You'd go more saturated, more realistic, you'd go less saturated. I think we'll go somewhere in the middle. I'll do the same for that pinky color. It's a bit too bright. So again, I'll bring the brightness down and somewhere in the middle around there looks fine. Thinking of this sort of purpley color looks a little bit strange. So I might go a little bit darker for that one. So it's a little bit more, not sure what the word is, but less fantasy and more, less childlike perhaps. He's a very wise wizard and doesn't read childish books. Okay, so this green, a little bit darker. Ooh, let's try and select the green. Green a little bit darker, and then I'll just adapt some of these colors and I'll speed this up. Okay, so we've got a variety of colors there. They might be a bit vivid. We can change those as we go. Still think that pinky color is a bit too much, so I'm going to change that one. Sometimes the warmer colors this side are actually just brighter, and so you need to bring the level of them down. This blue one here is very bright still though. That is, yes, way up there. So if we bring that down to a similar position to the red one, you can see how it looks a lot darker naturally. Okay, so we've got these objects here, And now if I select them and duplicate them, I'll use the selection over here, in fact, so you can see what I'm selecting. Shift D to duplicate, and bring them up. You can see how they've all got new random colors. And now I'm seeing that green is way too bright now as well, so I'm going to bring that right down. And that gives a bit more of a wizardy look. I think that yellow's standing out a bit more. Only when you get them like this that you can start to see the impact that they have. And this one's a tiny bit bright as well. Let's make that about there. Also, what I'm noticing is I don't like the shininess of them, so I'll just bring that down a little bit. That's obviously bringing down all the colors. It's going from this random color ramp to the principled BSDF, so all the colors are in here and coming out through our books here. So that's how we can get some random colors working with our objects. So a challenge to you might be to try the same thing with some of the potion bottles. You might want some as glass, so you might just want to select some. I'll just zoom in on those so you can see those over here. And I'll duplicate these, so Shift D, in fact, I'll do that, select all of them. Might as well select all of them, all these potion bottles anyway. Shift D to duplicate and bring them up. We can have these ones as glass and maybe these ones as a complete color. So if we look at my reference, you can see there's a jam jar that's glass there. There is a potion bottle there that's just glass. It's not many actually. Most have a color to them, which is probably a little bit more fun, to be honest. So you might only want a few that have see-through glass, like maybe that one at the back. So what I want you to do is try and take one of your potion bottles and recreate that material. Obviously you can just copy and paste it from the last one, but you can recreate it just to get that practice going, and then try and add the same material to each of the other bottles, just the bottles, not the bottle tops. And then each time we duplicate them, it will add a random color. You can also make this one maybe a bit more shiny or metallic or something like that, just for interest's sake. So pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. So I'm going to add a new material. And again, Shift A to add, and it's the object info. I can actually start typing object, and object info will come up. And then it's the random to the color. Nothing happens yet because we need our color ramp. So Shift A to add, converter and color ramp, or you can just search for color ramp. And then we need to add a few colors in here. You can add more or less. You could have more distance if you want most of your potions to be, let's say, red. You can have this area, I think, as red. And then obviously change this to constant. And then we're going to have lots of red bottles and less of the other ones. So I'll change these to different colors. These can possibly be a bit brighter. We'll see how we go. Okay, so we've got lots of different colors there. Now when I select these bottles here and select this one last, Control L to link materials, they should all have random colors. Interestingly, none of them chose the red, and they all had out of different colors. That's quite amusing, that is. It's typical when you do this sort of thing. But hopefully you all should have, let's in fact bring these right in and see if I can get loads of them to have the red. No, none of them. None of them get it. There we go. One's got the red there. And if I bring this one back, that would have red as well. It's just how these things go, really, isn't it? But I'll even them out now because I think I actually want more of them to have a bit more of the variety of colors anyway. Now we can play with these. At the moment they look a little bit dull, I suppose. We can add a little bit metallic, make them look shiny like this, and add a bit of shine as well, so they sort of glisten. It's kind of fun. We could even add a texture in to make it even more vibrant. I quite like the low poly look, so I'd rather go with base colors like this. Now you might find they're a bit vivid, so again you have to go into the colors and think about the brightness, bring that down, and I think that's a bit better, so less vivid I think makes sense. The yellow's not too bad, but perhaps somewhere like that. We can change these around as we go, but hopefully you got an okay with that, and you've got a few bottles here now. So if you haven't already, make sure you caught up with me and that you've saved your work ready for next time.